App founders are using this playbook to get hundreds of thousands of downloads on their apps by hiring college students, having them make videos every single day, and going viral with actually high converting short form videos on TikTok. So in this video, I talked to Canyon, the co-founder of Sideshift, a platform that has 150,000 college students looking for jobs in UGC and making these daily videos. He dropped some really good case studies where we go straight into the accounts and the formats that are getting downloads for apps right now.
So Sideshift, we started running kind of this high volume organic playbook in like late February, so probably like 4 months ago. Previous to that, we'd been, doing just marketing on our own social channels, physically going in person to these college campuses. And I think we were probably around like 10,000 kind of job seekers on our platform. So about 10,000 users. And over the past 3 to 4 months have kind of grown that to be now over 150,000 active job seekers. And it's largely been in part due to this high volume organic. It's probably the most cost effective way, I think, for consumer founders to, market and distribute their product. We've spent probably around 10K across the board. And so you just like run the numbers on that. And like a customer acquisition cost that's, pennies is just ridiculous. And so I think, as we run this playbook more too, you just get more efficient in it because you start to figure out the formats that work and you can just replicate that. And obviously they don't work forever. You need to continue to iterate and experiment. But it's one of those things where, I think we're going to continue to double down. We actually had to turn off our funnels in like mid-May. We only had one engineer at the time. And so when we had 50,000 new kind of creators join our marketplace in the span of like a week or two, like products started breaking. Our businesses were getting like 3,000 applicants, which is like great in theory. But the product wasn't really built for that. But it is one of those things where it's like, as our content, continues to convert and drive more users and creators to our platform, we see a direct correlation to the businesses that we work with having success because they're getting a bigger pool to pick from on the creator side. They can make hires much quicker and they can just launch much bigger programs for, a very, very affordable cost. So it's been really cool to see kind of how this flow has evolved.
How many views on short form videos do you think you got from the 10K budget?
Yeah, I can actually pull up and get a pretty accurate perception of this.
Oh yeah,
So,
that would be cool to like see it too.
yeah, we've run 2 campaigns. And so the last one that we ran, which I would say is probably equates to like half of our views, was 16 million through, it was, I think, a 300 post campaign. Maybe it was a little bit more. It might have been closer to 20. I think for whatever reason, the dates are off, but we just
16
found
million views
six,
in
yeah,
30 days from 60 posts.
from 300 posts. So
300
across
posts.
across the board, we had 5 creators making content, posting. Most of them were posting twice a day. And I would say for the first 2 weeks, I think UGC is one of these things where it takes a lot of patience because it like some people crack it right away. They find a winning format within like week one of posting. I would say that's not standard. For us, it took like 2 to 3 weeks. And then as soon as we found one format, we were just doubling down on that. We had all 5 of our creators pumping it out like every other day basically. And, it was a 2 million view video here, a 5 million view video here, 100,000 video views that start to stack up. And it's like when one account starts to pick up steam, like it just is really just a flywheel that affects all the videos. People are then engaging with the rest of their videos, which just kind of fuels the funnel, and their account just gets pushed out into, that audience that you're, inevitably trying to target. And so I think it's one of those things where founders that, have patience and are willing to go weeks or even months at a time without seeing, extremely extraordinary results, like they get rewarded in the long run because they just continue to experiment and iterate. And so it's one thing that we with the companies that we work with, try to just alert them that look, it doesn't work on the first try every single time. Sometimes it takes 300 posts before you find that winning format. But when you do, you're able to just double down on that and really just change your business
Can we see
dramatically.
some of the videos from this campaign?
One of the things that we have really tried to lean into is just with like the job market, everything that's going on. I think it's like leaning into trends of just like the broader like macro economy as well as like trends that are happening on TikTok. It's like you don't need to reinvent the wheel. I mean, we see he's like getting denied from whatever jobs, leaning into the fact that he has a master's degree. We can click in. These slideshow formats have, actually really converted a ton as well. And it's just like, it's subtle. It's not just screaming your product out. It's just, subtly dropping it in there. Sometimes saying the product, you don't always need to lay the product, but like, UGC creator Sideshift app, this gets a few 100,000 views. Like that just converts insanely well.
That's a perfect slideshow. That got 84,000 views, and you listed the name of the app on the last slide, and it was like highly engaging because it's like, what are you gonna rate the next thing, like the out of 10 format? I feel like it's really
Right.
strong. Also, this guy has less than 2,000 followers. He has 1,900 followers. Like,
Right.
how did
When
this
when he
guy
when he
know how
started
to?
the account, he had 0 followers. And so like these are all, these are fresh accounts. Obviously you get it warmed up into whatever niche, you're trying to go after, but it's like as you start to like it definitely, as we can see, like if we go all the way back here, he's been posting for a while. Like some of the videos, it takes a while. Like these videos only get 100 views. Like you start getting into the 1,000 view range, but you post a ton and you see no results for a while, it can start to be like very, discouraging. But I think, just continuing to put shots on goal, it's one of the things that's really hard for people. I think people just tend to give up on a marketing channel and just try and go find the next best thing. But like the reality is like all of these marketing channels, they're hard to master and it just takes reps, it just takes practice. And I think the beauty of UGC is you can get so many more reps and so much more practice for just such a cheap cost. And it just allows for so much experimentation.
Can you go to some of the viral ones and then some of the not viral ones and like kind of describe the differences? Like, what do you think
Yeah, yeah,
made
yeah.
these do well?
So for this one, like we had found this format with one of our other creators, like getting denied from a job, having a master's degree. Like it's ironic in the sense that like, oh my God, like even in this job market, even if you're, college educated, have gone to school, it's something that just like resonates with a lot of people. And so I think something that's either extremely controversial drives a lot of engagement or something that is just extremely resonating with a large demographic of people. Like everyone in the comments is just talking about like how just difficult, the job market is. And, so it's one of those things. And so I think he did a good job of also too, like you can see how engaging he is with these comments. Like that's something that just continues to spur, additional engagement. People are then responding to him and like that engagement level continues to push your videos out into the feed. And so I think that's something we try to work with our creators a lot on is like, look, it doesn't just stop at the video you post. Like you need to go environment or engineer this environment in the comments that's extremely collaborative, has people asking where are people finding jobs, and that's where you can start to subtly plug in your product as well. Because at the end of the day, views are great, but it's like, how do we get our product? It's like, boom, like this is why I only use Sideshift, People are liking that. That's converting to real users. And so, I mean, we can even go down here to like an older one. And I mean, I think too, a lot of it, it's just like experimentation. And so you don't really know at the start what formats are going to work. I mean, we can even see here, we got like one of our other creators that, is trying to subtly plug there. But I also think sometimes these accounts just take time to warm up and some just get a little bit luckier and get pushed out into the feed right away and, have insane engagement. Others just take more time. And so it's one of those things where you kind of just got to weather the storm and, wait to just find a format that, resonates with people.
That's interesting. So what I'm curious, like what instructions did you give this creator when you first hired him?
did you have some kind of brief um, showing? That would also be interesting.
Yeah, so I can pull up kind of an example brief. I will use one of our customers as an example. I won't go fully into the details to get rid of their secret sauce, but I'll kind of give the high level. So I think one thing that is important to touch on is like, who is your company? Like, what does your company do in your own words? Because I think a lot of the time people will just be like, hey, go download my app and like make content about it. And a lot of the time, like a creator, like using an app for the first time, like seeing it from an outside lens, like they don't necessarily know like what the core value prop of that product is. Like, what's that viral moment that I can lean into? Like, what problem are you solving with your audience? And so I think that's one thing to touch on. Like, one thing they did a really good job of is like adding in like Loom videos, chatting through their product, making it extremely, personalized. Like, you want to start to, treat your creators like they're a part of this community. You want them to be excited to make content about your product. So that's one thing. I think as well, like, who's your target audience? Like, do you have personas that they can tap into? Because at the end of the day, one of the things is like, as they warm this account up, they need to make sure that it's getting pushed out into the right audience so that people are actually engaging with their content. And so I think that's like one of the biggest things and one of the most important things of the brief is like, who do we actually want to target? And I think some people run into the trap where they have a product that could really just be targeted at anyone and they don't focus on any specific niche. And because of that, the content that gets pushed out feels pretty just like bland. There's nothing special to it. It doesn't feel like it's meant for anyone. And I think because of that, like, it just doesn't perform that strongly. Another thing that's, I think extremely strong, and this is something that gets built up over time. If you have viral videos on your own socials, if you have people that have made content for you, like, link those videos, give your creators a starting point so that when they start making content, like, they already have a few formats that they can run with. Obviously, you want to give your creators, the creative freedom to do what they do best and experiment and find new formats for you. But if you don't give them anything, like, they're kind of just starting from a disadvantage when you can kind of just prop them up a bit. If you have competitors or adjacent players in your kind of, community, maybe for us, like, we're a job platform at the end of the day for these creators. If there's like other job-esque content that has gone viral before, trying to kind of take those themes and transfer them into kind of your niche and about your company and product. And yeah, I think that kind of ties into this, like, formats from other videos, like Sideshift, MigrateMate, we're both kind of job boards in that regard. So there's a lot of similarities that you can transfer over. I think putting together hook ideas is like, good, but not necessary all the time. I think sometimes having a few can be a good starting point, but I think sometimes the challenge people run into is they just overwhelm their creators and they just throw like this 50-page brief at them. And it's like, like, nobody wants to read that. Like, they're just going to open it up and see how overwhelming it is. And just, instead of hitting, the few key points that are actually important to learn, they'll just skip it all together because they're like, I don't want to sift through this. And so it's like, how can we condense the most important information and just like give that to, our creators? Pay as well. This is usually something you'll talk about with the creators as well. We kind of recommend like a hybrid model. So $15 to $20 per video with a base retainer is pretty common. And then we like to throw pretty generous performance bonuses as well. I think it really aligns incentives and, can drive a ton of just engagement. It'll, incentivize them to engage with comments after they just post the video. And so I think there's, a lot of good that comes from this kind of hybrid model in terms of attracting quality people with that retainer and then just aligning incentives with those bonuses. Rules, guidelines, whatever this be, a lot is like, hey, mention our company, don't mention other companies, don't do XYZ. Some people like to have ownership and usage rights, and so they'll have people upload, videos to a Google Drive. But I would say from a high level, like keep the creator brief short and sweet, but like try and, add some valuable information that, people can just act on right away.
Yeah, this is gold. Could you screen share again? And I want to show you something actually. Could you go to spytalk.com and then type in, like, because to your point about how do you give your creators formats that are already working in the niche? I just want to quickly demo this. So just like type this in. I think it'll be a good example. So these are like,
we could even
try the keywords that I sent you.
Yeah, like these are like, this is interesting too, because is this like, oh, interesting. I like this. Like this one, for example, 61.8. Obviously this looks like it was, a little higher quality. But I think, this is like great, just finding potential inspiration and tools out there. This is a great tool. And I'm sure it's like one of those things where, you just play around with a ton of keywords. Like even if there's content that you have out there, like kind of trying to dump maybe some of those captions or, what you're having your creators look for when they're warming up their accounts and things like that. Yeah, this is a really cool tool. I'll definitely have to do a little more research on this. Good plug.
Could you also quickly explain like the warm-up process?
Yeah. So to kind of chat through the warm-up process, I know everyone kind of has their different views, and I think there's a lot of just unknown, and so I don't think anyone's necessarily right or wrong. There's different ways to do it that still work. I think how we try and describe it to our creators is by just saying like, put yourself in the shoes of kind of the end user. Like if I'm promoting for Sideshift, like act as if you're a broke college student that like needs a side hustle and like maybe makes content already or has, done side hustles in the past, and just like act as if you're one of those people and just engage with that content consistently. You need to act human. Like these algorithms get better every single month. And so if you just like spam and interact with every single post and just like scroll very quickly, like people can tell that's not just like human behavior. Act as if you're actually scrolling. It's definitely very tedious and probably the worst part of this entire process. And so how we try and frame it to our creators is like, look, we want to have you making content with us for, the next year potentially. And like the account warm-up process kind of lays the foundation for that. And so do it right the first time so that you ideally don't need to make another account and start over from scratch. And like as you build up this account, like you'll have thousands and thousands of followers if done correctly that you'll gain over the next few months. And so just take the extra, few hours that it takes to warm it up properly. We typically do like a 3 to 5 day warm up. I like to start my creators posting on Mondays. And so if I onboard a crew on like Wednesday, like maybe the warm up process is a little bit longer. If I onboard them on Friday, maybe it's a little bit shorter. I think that stuff's a little arbitrary. I think if you just maybe take a little bit more time on a shorter like day window, maybe you spend, an extra hour warming it up, like that's one way to do it. And so I think there's different methodologies for it. A lot of people have like the bottom up approach, you're sharing, you're commenting, you're liking, you're engaging. But I think just like the bottom line is like, you just need to act like a human and act like a human that's in that niche that you're actually promoting. And I think it goes a long way. And there's all these like little, I think, like kind of nuances that you can do to your account that I think just help in the long run. And there's tons of guides out there. But yeah, like kind of like long stories, just like keep it short and sweet for the creators. Like give them your maybe list of like nuances that they need to do when setting up their account. But otherwise, yeah, that's kind of what I think works best.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, no one really knows like how to get around anti-bot. Like we don't have visibility into the TikTok algorithm, so
right,
you kind of just have to like. But if you think about it, like they have the anti-bot to filter out people that are not human, so just act human and
right,
it should work. Yeah,
Right. Seems simple. And these algorithms, they get better every single day because obviously their end goal is to reduce bot activity. And so the more just organic and authentic you can be, I think I definitely think there's a very strong correlation to how these accounts perform.
Nice. Can we talk about that photo app?
Yeah, so we just started working with a solo founder. He's building an app called Photogenic, pretty much like AI photo album. So instead of taking your grad photos, you can just leverage his platform. Instead of taking headshots, you can just use the app. There's different use cases that he's starting to see pop up, like even ID photos for like, student IDs or work IDs, stuff like that. And so he had never run organic before, but has built, a ton of mobile products and, heard about us through obviously the Twitter boy. And so reached out, had a conversation with him. He's like, yeah, I'm just gonna, start small with one creator, try and, figure out some formats that, work. And so he actually took a lot of time sifting through applicants. I think on our platform, he got few hundred applicants, and he like took a really long time to like look through their accounts, see if they'd made content before, like look at their TikTok, see if they had gone viral before. And so let me maybe share my screen and see if I can pull up his account real quick. So yeah, he got like 600 applicants. Obviously, it takes a while to sift through, and he was only hiring one, so he obviously had to be a little bit more selective. But it was a few things. First thing, this is the girl he ended up hiring. If we check out her TikTok, like she had just even on her own TikTok had a history of going viral. Like has had a ton of posts perform well. Hasn't even posted a ton, but just has seen some really strong results. So that was obviously a huge indicator. Second indicator is like when he actually had a conversation with her, she was extremely responsive. She was like wanting to run strategy on the account. She's like, I have a ton of ideas that I would love to experiment with. And it's funny because he was like, anytime I would throw an idea at her to try it out, like it would perform terribly. So I ended up just letting her run things fully. And I think that's like one of the fine lines between like giving people just enough information on kind of what your product is and who you're targeting and then letting them run free. Obviously, not every creator is built the same, and some people you need to be a little bit more hands-on with. But yeah, just like in her case alone, I think it's good to like figure out how hands-on or hands-off they want to be with everything. But yeah, we can pull up how this account performed, and it's just absolutely insane. 46 posts on this campaign and doing 35 million total views. Like that's almost a million views per post, which is insane, especially for his first crack at it, hiring one creator and just like hitting the jackpot right away. I think there's a few interesting things that he noticed from this process as well. Like insane growth in users. So he saw like a 10x growth in just like the amount of downloads that he was getting on a weekly basis, which is obviously huge. But what's really interesting too is before, when people would go to his app, it would convert at around 5 to 10%. Like let's say someone views him on the App Store, the chance that they actually downloaded the app was like 1 in 10 or even 1 in 20, which is extremely low. And obviously for new apps that don't have a ton of ratings, don't have a ton of social proof, like people are just less likely to give them a shot. And since running this organic playbook, it was converting at over 50%. So 1 out of every 2 people that actually searched him up on the App Store or saw him on the App Store was downloading it. And I think it just goes to show that like hearing about a product through just like an organic piece of content gives it so much more credibility that these views and these engagements, they convert at such a higher rate. And so I think it goes to show that like organic, I think is starting to become, leaps and bounds more effective than even paid ads for a lot of these consumer products out there. But yeah, I mean, this account was going absolutely, crazy. We can pull it up here and just see. And what's funny is like, one of the things that was working really well is like he had a bunch of conceptions of like, let me just show the best pieces of content of the product. But like one thing, let's see if I can find I don't know which video it was, but like he was just showing, she was like posting like when the AI would mess up and like the crazy like formats that it would pump out. And I think that was pretty comical. I think, I don't know if we can maybe pull this one up. But like, yeah, like for example, like has like a third leg sticking out, and it just drove so much engagement. She was like great in the comments as well, like responding to comments, like as soon as someone asks like what the app is, plugging Photogenic in. And so, yeah, super, strong results from someone that has just started it. And so he's also just learned a lot about his product in itself. Like, I think when you get so many more users on your product, he's been able to just create such an environment in there that has increased retention and, just drove tons of super users that I think he wouldn't have otherwise had if he didn't get that influx of users right off the bat. And so, yeah, he's been crushing. So that's been, really cool to see for someone that's just kind of giving it a go at their first time at it.
That's wild. 35 million views with 50 videos. It's so true. Also, like when you have an ad on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or anything, you automatically, like, it's labeled as an ad and it's an ad. So of course the landing page conversion is going to be lower than if the person's like actively searching for the app in the app store, because there's no link to the app store, right? Like on these on any of these videos, they're like closing the TikTok app, going to the app store, searching it in, and then once they find the app, of course they're not gonna like drop off at that point, like maybe 50% do, but that's just like so much better than maybe accidentally clicking the ad and then be like, oh, actually I don't want this.
Exactly.
That's really cool. Nice. That's a great case study. Can we look at the studio as well?
Yeah, for sure. So we've been working with an app studio, Vert Ventures. They're promoting a couple of their apps right now. Astra is like astrology app. Haven is like a Bible study app. And one thing that they've done a really good job of, I think both of their apps have been like top 5 in their category for past few weeks, or they've been in and out of it, but I know they've been crushing. And one thing that they've done a great job of is finding winning formats in organic and sparking them into paid. And so I think there's like some products I think are naturally better for organic and some products are naturally better for paid. And I think they've found this good blend of the ability to drive downloads through organic and find a way to just repurpose that content for paid. And so I think it's definitely something that's a lot harder, to learn and master. Like they're wicked smart on the growth side over there and, have a history of just doing insane stuff in terms of distribution. But they've just experimented with so many different formats, creators from every side of the spectrum. They've got a few girls, a few guys working on it, a bunch of different ages, tons of different formats. Like we can, click on this video, for example, and it's like talking about, your sign and how, Astra helped them find their sign and stuff like that, as opposed to like, we've got this kid over here who's talking and just displaying a ton of astrology knowledge and, plugging, Astra is obviously a resource to, kind of try and find this information, especially if you're, it's something that you're interested in. And so it's interesting to see how, a lot of different apps can take a very different approach and still, see great results. And I think it just comes down to, that piece of you just need to experiment and throw a ton of shots on goal and just start to figure out, where your app kind of fits into the kind of distribution network and what levers you can pull on to really just drive the biggest impact. And so I think it's something they've done, a great job of over the past like few months and honestly over since they've launched.
That's awesome. So you're getting all these downloads from your viral TikToks. How do you actually turn these people into customers? You do that with paywalls. with Superwall. So Superwall helps you build paywalls for your mobile apps. And Superwall is sponsoring this pod, but they've also just been super active members of Consumer Club for forever. And yeah, Consumer Club is where I talk to other app founders about these strategies every day. We talk about what's working, what's not working for viral distribution and just other ways of doing marketing for your apps. So check out Superwall, check out Consumer Club. Back to the pod. I feel like for app studios like this, where they're building multiple apps, it's a really great way to test. Like you see the huge numbers and it's like, oh yeah, you can scale, you can get, hundreds, thousands of downloads on your app. But it seems like an actually pretty cheap way to test a market too. Like if someone has an app and they're trying to test this marketing channel with short form TikTok or short form organic, what strategy have you seen work well for just doing kind of like low budget tests and validating app ideas?
Yeah, no, it's totally true. And I think it's going to become even more true as coding just becomes easier and easier as these tools get better and better. We see teams that are shipping products every single week, running distribution on them for a month and either just pivoting their product. Maybe they, had a great thesis, but the way, users are actually leveraging and using their product is just different than, they initially set out to. And so, just refining products so much quicker. I think that's just a way people have been testing too. And then another way is just like, hey, like, do people actually care about this? Like if I, can run organic and get a few hundred users on this, like, will they stay? Will they continue to use the product? Will they churn out right away? Will any of them actually pay for this? And so I think it's a really quick way to just like validate your idea, validate if like people care about it. Because like, sure, you can get, a couple hundred people to just download your product. Like that's one thing, but can you continue to get these people to, stay on the product and, even pay for your product? And so I think it's just been such a quick way to just really close that feedback loop. You can hire a couple creators, pump out, 30, 50 videos, get a ton of eyeballs on it in a really short period of time and either make the necessary adjustments that you're seeing on the product, maybe switch the format, switch the messaging that you're using, maybe see if it's maybe better for a different target audience. And so I just think there's a ton of experimentation. And I think the beauty with UGC is like, you can run so much experimentation for so cheap. You're paying, what is it, 20 or so dollars for each video. Like you can run so many different formats. You can target a handful of different audiences if you're still trying to figure that aspect out. And like you can just iterate so much quicker and, so much more cost effectively. And that's why I think so many of these companies are now just like fundraising as app studios with like maybe some core thesis that they have and just testing that thesis out with, 10 or 20 different products before they maybe find the 2 or 3 that they want to double down on.
What deal structure would you do to get like minimum viable test? Like, would you book a creator for a whole month and try to get 30 videos, or would you do like 1 week of videos, or would you do like one single video? How would you like approach that if you're just trying to test as quickly as possible?
Yeah, so I think if you're running paid as opposed to organic, I think you could do creators on like a week to week basis. Maybe you have them pump out like 5 to 10 different formats that you just run paid ads across. And I think you can get really good feedback there. Like, do any of these formats convert? Like, do people actually download when they see this? And like, maybe we find 1 or 2 winning formats. Maybe we double down on that and, then we can compare that to organic as well. And so I think for organic, the challenge with a really short time period is, you just don't get a ton of data. And I think the game's a little bit different than paid. I mean, personally, I think like a 2-week timeline is pretty sufficient. You'll start to get a good sense of, hey, like, especially if we have a few creators, like if none of these creators' accounts are moving, and like even if their accounts are moving and getting views, but we're not seeing conversions, like why is that? Like try and figure out the why behind it. And then like when you understand like maybe why things aren't working, even if you pivot and, run things over the next 2 weeks and are still seeing very similar, results that just don't seem to be very promising, then it's like one of those things like, okay, maybe we need to question what we're building and what this thesis is. And, maybe we just need to figure out, a different product idea or a different, I guess, kind of take on whatever we're building right now.
That's great. That's great advice. Super actionable. Is there anything else you wanted to? I think that was like the most of the stuff I wanted to cover. Is there anything else you wanted to cover?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I've been thinking a lot about in this kind of just consumer distribution space is how quickly it's evolved and changed. And I think, we look back to, 3 to 4 years ago was kind of just like when influencer marketing really started to take off. And I think like within the past, couple of years, like it's kind of pivoted more into like this micro influencer marketing. And like now it's kind of come down to UGC marketing. And so I think what's interesting is I think there will be a convergence in the sense that like, the price that influencers are getting paid is coming down, and the price that UGC creators, it's kind of starting to converge. And I think the reality is like these algorithms reward quality content. And so you no longer need to have hundreds of thousands of followers to, drive an impact. And I think the reality is too, like with cheaper creators, there's so much more experimentation that can be done. I think the beauty of it too is like when you bring these creators on board, it's going directly into your audience as opposed to, an influencer. Like, sure, they may be in your niche, but there's never a one-to-one overlap. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how this space continues to evolve. I think my take on it is like the cost of, influencer and micro influencer marketing will continue to drop down. I do think that massive enterprise brands will continue to dump money into it because the way I view it is more of just like brand awareness and tying your brand to a personality. I don't necessarily think there's a strong ROI there. And that's why I think so many startups and even like middle to late stage growth companies are starting to lean into this kind of UGC playbook because they realize that like the ROI, the impressions that they're able to generate is just vastly, cheaper than what you might have to pay to an influencer. And so I think the one thing that'll be interesting to see too is like as AI and the content that you can produce with AI evolves, it's like, where does that pillar fit into kind of this scene? I think there's very much so a chance that it kind of can be just another distribution channel. I think we're starting to see different use cases pop up there especially with kind of VO3 and, the type of content that is starting to get produced out of there. I still think there's definitely a level of skill that is, being taken to have to produce that high quality content. And so I think as those tools become more intuitive and, they have more reach and kind of anyone can start to create this content. That will be really interesting to see and seeing even how creators can begin to leverage these tools and kind of use that as even a complement to, the content that they're already making.
It reminds me of just like people say marketing channels are dead. Like I see these tweets all the time where people are like, paid ads is dead, cold email is dead, all like SEO is dead, but I feel like nobody's paying attention to organic UGC. It's just like such a sleeper channel. Like maybe is it because it's Gen Z? Like why you think Sideshift is doing so well right now? Like clearly like the results are good, but why was no one else really doing this before you guys showed up?
Yeah, I think there's a few reasons. I think like number one is like this organic UGC stuff is still relatively new. Like I think, like the hardcore consumer founders have been running this playbook for a while. And I think, these marketing channels, they take time to start to reach, bigger companies and other companies that just are not as familiar with the distribution space in general. And so I think it'll continue to get more popular over time, like as people continue to have, these insane results. it's very similar with how influencer marketing and micro influencer marketing, started to blow up for a few years because people were having insane results. App goes to number one running this playbook. It's the same idea. As more and more kind of proof of concepts start to evolve, more people will start being like, okay, I guess this actually is a viable marketing channel. I still think there's a lot of people that, don't necessarily have a ton of faith in it. And I think sometimes, those are just, the late adopters, and the people that kind of get to the punch first are going to continue to be rewarded. And I think, as it gets a little bit more crowded, it'll be interesting to see like what strategies need to be taken to, ensure that you're still getting, good ROI from kind of that distribution lens. I think another thing in terms of like why we've had a lot of success, I think there's something to be said about like our core demographic being college students. I think, there's tons of creator marketplaces out there, but there's still really like influencer marketing in the sense that like it's content creators that already have massive followings on TikTok or Instagram that are going to these marketplaces to try and sign brand deals. And so when people come there to try and hire for UGC, there's just a little bit of a disconnect. And so I think like us going the college route from the start, like, I mean, we physically went to 25 different college campuses in person to onboard kind of that first 10 to 20,000 users. And I think because of that, like we've gotten really strong word of mouth and growth within college. Like I think a lot of people that see our content, like it kind of just feels like this like college Gen Z marketplace. And I think because we built up our core audience kind of in that space, we've actually been able to, have a lot stronger results with the brands that we work with, because the big thing is like these kids, they're hungry. They're not able to find these jobs. Like they're not these massive influencers on TikTok that just have extremely high expectations. And a lot of them are just really eager to get experience, working with a really fast growing startup that's building a really cool product is extremely exciting. And being able to have a direct impact on their growth, like that's more meaningful a lot of the time than, the potential, few $100s or few $1,000s that you're going to get paid out. And so I think like we've just tried to instill with a lot of the businesses that we work with, it's like, look, like make this relationship more than just a transaction. Like try and, build this as a relationship. Like we always frame it to our creators. It's like, look, you might start as a content creator, but like next thing you know, you could be a strategist for our campaigns or for some of the campaigns for the companies we work with. And like a lot of the times that leads to, these growth marketing distribution roles, which are starting to become more and more important. And so I think it's just more so a framing thing and just the reality that like, hey, these are college educated kids. They're smart, but they're hungry. And like when you pair those things together, I think you can really see some, really impactful results.
That's so true. I feel like, there's no like UGC school. There's no like University of UGC. So the only way to really get these people into senior roles is to get them the experience first and then, have them take on these head of growth roles. I've seen that so many times, like start out as a TikTok intern and then they get good at it and then they can now manage and hire and help grow more employees, like more TikTok people, and you can like that's when you really scale. That's about it for me. Thanks for sharing. I think there wasn't more that I wanted to cover. I like the stuff that you keep adding though. Was there anything else?
No, I honestly no, that was great. I also thanks for plugging that Spy Talk tool. I had actually never heard of it, but this is a sick product.
Yeah, that's me actually.
Oh, that's your product?
Yeah. I co-founded that with one of the members of Consumer Club.
No way.
And he does consulting. He's done like millions of views for his clients just doing like or mass organic TikTok. But then the first half of that consulting process is always doing research and finding winning formats in a niche. So usually he builds this white label as just like a custom like research tool for his clients. But then I saw it and I was like, wait, this should be like a product for like anyone who's running UGC should just be using this. Check out these other videos on the channel. We have other pod interviews. I always try to keep it as tactical as possible, diving into case studies, tactics, what's working right now for viral distribution, growth hacking for apps, check out these other videos.